In this video, I share 3 of the most overrated time management and productivity tools, and I'm going to tell you what to do instead. Now, this is essential because I often say your time and your life are inseparable. You can't have one without the other. So if you want to manage your life, your quality of life and happiness, ultimately you have to be able to manage your time. Now, what's more, a lot of these things have been sort of come from the laboratory or the ongoing experiment of my own life. I've nerded out on a lot of these topics, and while I can't say, I don't know, I'm like the guru or something, I do run my own business, speaking, consulting practice, as well as managing this channel and creating my own happiness PhD in about 30 to 40 hours a week. So I still have time to exercise, be with friends, go outside, do fun stuff. So I say that because a lot of this stuff is kind of been proven or tested in my own life. And so I think it'll be very practical for you. So let's jump into this. The first tool that I think you probably have heard about, and to me it's just not all that effective, is Pomodoro. So this is the structure where what you're going to do is they recommend that you set a timer for 25 minutes. You work for 25 minutes, then you take a 5-minute break. Work for 25 minutes, 5-minute break, 25, 5-minute break, and you do 3 or 4 of those, and then you take a slightly longer break. So the issue I have experienced with this system myself is just really there's 2 pieces. Number one, this is something that one of my favorite business professors said, Lonnie Strickland, who was sort of a leader in business strategy, business thinking, published some of the first business strategy textbooks. He said 90% of strategies fail simply because they're not implementable. And the Pomodoro is a perfect example of this. Like if you think reality is going to fit perfectly into these 25-minute increments, you're pretty mistaken. So oftentimes what you find is something comes up or you get really wrapped into something and you like, oh, the timer went off, but I really need to keep going on this. Or you're in a meeting that's supposed to be 30 minutes and it runs to 40 minutes. All these different things, right? It's kind of just not quite implementable. But there's another piece of this. And if you're anything like me, I often feel like I need almost 20 minutes to sort of get into the flow of what I'm doing. And once I'm in there, if I'm writing or I'm doing videos like this or I'm reading a book, the last thing I want to do is stop. I'm like, dude, I'm cranking, I'm in the zone. I just want to go. So it's important that you don't go too far with that because you need to get some rest. But I find that 25 minutes is kind of like annoyingly short. So here's what I recommend instead. This is the 3 to 4 hours rule. And there's a related rule that's more like the 4 to 5 hours rule. So 3 to 4 hours rule comes from Oliver Burkeman, who wrote a great book called Time Management for Mortals. The 4 to 5 hour one comes from a guy named Alex Pang, who's written several books on rest. But they're really referring to the same thing. Both of these gentlemen, what they did was they looked at the lives of very successful creators and thinkers and all these really impressive people throughout history, and they looked at their sort of time management and productivity strategies. And what they found is that most of these people, your Newtons, your Einstein, your Darwins, your big writers, all worked about 3 to 5 hours at their desk, usually earlier in the morning. And then they kind of went on and did something else. Maybe they did that in their study and then they had to go give lectures if they were a professor. Maybe they went on a long walk afterwards. Maybe they, did that study and then went and did something else in their business. But the idea was that they usually did like this 3 to 5 hour block early in the day of deep focused work. And that was kind of the maximum they did. They didn't work 50, 60 hours a week, regardless of what some productivity gurus or whatever might say about like, oh, just work 80 hours a week and hustle. That's not what these people did. This aligns as well with my firsthand experience, where to me, I feel like maybe 6 maximum, but there's really like 4 to 5 really good hours to me from like 9 to 1 where I'm crushing. And then outside of that, it's not so great. So I found it much more practical, much more effective to think about like this 3 or 4 hour block of protected time where you can really go deep, focus on these maybe harder, more complex tasks early in the day, and then give yourself permission to take a break after that or switch to like lighter work, like checking email or doing admin type stuff. So that's your first shift, going from Pomodoro to the 4 to 5 hours rule, we'll call it. The second one is you've probably seen this idea of quadrants. It was originally came from Stephen Covey. It's called the Eisenhower matrix. So you have up top urgent and not urgent, and then you have on the side important and not important. And the idea is that you basically funnel your to-do list into these things. So you've got urgent and important. You have to do it right away. It's not urgent but important. You need to plan it out. Then you have it's not important and it's urgent. You should delegate it. And then you have not urgent, not important, just don't do it at all. So my problem with this is, once again, it doesn't seem all that practical or all that implementable. And the reason I say that is because I could have this list made out in front of me and I still would be looking and be like, well, I have 3 urgent and important things and I have like 5 other super important things that aren't quite as urgent, but they're maybe even more important. So it's like, what do I do? Or you have things that maybe are somewhat urgent and not that important, but it's like, still need to get done. Or you have things that are not urgent and not important that once again may still need to get done, and you may not have a team of people you can outsource things to. I even look at this, something like urgent but not important is like, I've been dealing with getting my health insurance processed right now because as an entrepreneur I have to like go through the state marketplace and get it individually, and it's like, I mean, that's pretty urgent, but I don't know how important it is, but I definitely need to do it. But I could also look at it and say, well, it's really important, but the odds I get injured in the next few days are pretty low, so maybe it's not that important. And so it's just, you get this list that's put in these 4 boxes, but it's still not helping you, in my opinion, to decide in that given moment, which one am I going to do, which one am I not going to do. So coming back here, what I think is a far better strategy compared to the Eisenhower matrix is what I call time blocking. And with time blocking, you may even consider some non-negotiables. So time blocking is basically saying, all right, first of all, I'm going to decide what are my priorities, and they should be a list. So that's another issue with the quadrant thing, is like you have some over here, some over here, some over here. You should have one list in order of importance. And you can attach deadlines to it. So maybe the thing that's the #1 most important thing, you look and it's say, ooh, that thing below it's also pretty important and it's due tomorrow. That's fine. But at least you can go top down one thing at a time, deciding, am I going to execute? Am I going to execute? Am I going to execute? But the power of time blocking is, again, instead of going from a list, you're actually going to plan out when you're going to do it. So you have, right, all these important things in order of importance, and then you can actually sit down at the beginning of the week and say, sorry, oh, I'm going to spend 2 hours this day on this, or 2 hours this day on this, and it's important. You can also do recurring. So if you say, hey, I want to start reading more, well, reading more is important, but is it ever really going to get done if you have all these other things on your to-do list? So kind of a non-negotiable time block would say, I'm going to do 30 minutes of reading after lunch every single day, and it's just fixed in my calendar. I know it's going to happen. Or maybe if you're working on something more entrepreneurial, it's X amount of sales calls. Or if you're trying to write something, it's 10 pages of your book. Or another issue with this list is like exercise, for instance, or going to the gym. It's like, I guess that would be kind of important, but for your personal life, but not that important for your productivity. But it's also not that urgent. So I guess you could plan it out, right? But I prefer to just say, these are the blocks. When I'm going to do it, boom, it's done. I don't even have to think about it. And if something really weird comes up, I can always move that block a little bit. Like if I said, oh, I'm going to work out every day from 4 to 5, and I have this really important meeting come in, I can always move it from 4:30 to 5:30 or whatever. So that's the second shift I would say is, I don't think this Eisenhower matrix is all that important. I think kind of the idea of prioritizing based on importance is useful, but I'd way rather have it in one list in order of importance, and then I have my daily and weekly time blocks where I know exactly what I'm going to do in the moment when I'm going to do it. Okay, here's your third one. This one is SMART goals. So SMART goals being anything that is specific, measurable, achievable, relevant, and time-based. So here's my issue with SMART goals is, you can have a goal that's specific. I want to lose 10 pounds. It's measurable and it's pretty achievable and it's relevant because it's about my health, and then time-based. Okay, I want to lose 10 pounds in the next 6 months. That's realistic. Okay, so I write it down, I visualize it, I post it on my wall. I'm going to lose, and then 1 month goes by. All right, 5 months, I'm going to lose 10 pounds. 4 months, I'm going to lose 10 pounds. You never actually expressed or articulated or planned the part where you're actually going to do the inputs that lead to the output, or take the steps or actions or behaviors that lead to the result. Right? So I'm kind of believing that goal setting is largely overrated. What you should focus on instead is behavior setting, or what I sometimes refer to as behavior-based goals. So this is how do you take some sort of goal or SMART goal and turn it down into actual tangible behaviors. So to use that made up example of like 10 pounds in 6 months, well, what would it take to lose 10 pounds in 6 months? Well, I'd probably need to do mostly cardio, but then I'd mix in a little bit of weight training. So I need to do, let's say, 3 hours of cardio each week plus 2 full body lifting sessions. Okay, great. Well, when are you going to do that? Okay, I gotta schedule that out. And then your goal, your behavior-based goal becomes, let's say, Monday, Wednesday, and Friday from 5 p.m. to 6 p.m. I will do 1 hour of steady state cardio. Then Tuesday and Thursday from 5 to 6 p.m. I will do 1 full body weight training session. And then guess what? If you execute on your behavioral goal, the actual goal of losing 10 pounds takes care of itself. And so in any area of life, whether it's personal or it's more productivity, I try to say it's great to set goals, sure, but then what is the system or the repeating actions or the actual tangible behaviors that are going to lead to the outcome of that said goal? It's the third shift. So I said I was going to do 3 of these, but I'm going to add in a bonus one here. And the final most overrated or unnecessary or downright unhelpful productivity or time management thing is any productivity or time management thing that's so thorough and so refined and so complex that you spend too much time managing all the stuff and not enough time executing on the stuff. And I'll share, I'm a little bit guilty of this in my life a few times, where I've got this master system where I've got my project list, my to-do list, my wait list. I've got all these different time blocks. I've got all these different goals. And it's like, each day I felt like I was spending an hour just moving things around on my lists and calendars. And then each weekend I would spend like 2 hours on my weekly review. And I was like, holy shit. So what, an hour a day is like 5 hours plus like 2 on, I just spent like 7 hours, like an entire work day working on my system rather than working in it, rather than actually executing it. And so the last thing I encourage you to look out for, and this is particularly true if you're like me and you're kind of nerdy and maybe a little bit neurotic around productivity and like efficiency and discipline, is the perfect system is actually imperfect, right? You should have clear priorities, some clear non-negotiables, some time blocks, some things you do to take care of yourself, your body, your mind, your business, or your career too. Not that you have to own your own business or something. And outside of that, the system doesn't need to be perfect, right? You need to be focused on execution and having a system that's basically good enough to keep you organized and reduce your stress a little bit, but not so complex and so intricate and so perfect, right, that you're having to like deal with all this mental energy to just keep the system perfect when you could be taking action. Those are 3, I guess 4 of the most overrated productivity or time management tools, but a few things you can do instead, right? So we talked about this 4 or 5 hour rule. Anywhere from 3 to 5 is a good block, I believe, for deep focused work, and then you can take a rest. We talked about going from 4 quadrants to a prioritized list and then time blocking out certain things and making sure some of those things are non-negotiables, the essentials that matter most. And then we talked about going from goal setting to behavior setting, right? So not about SMART goals as much as designing systems and recurring behaviors that are going to be the inputs that lead you to get those outputs. So that's all for now. The large team of magical elves that live inside of my YouTube channel have decided that this is the best video for you to watch next. But until then, this has been your happiness nerd, Jackson Kirchis, and I'll see you next time.